This is Cruise Radio.
Cruise Radio is brought to you in part by tripinsurance.com. Travel insurance done right by the people who know travel insurance. Get a quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida.
This is
Cruise Radio. Cruise Radio.
Last month, Krystal took an 8-night Royal Caribbean cruise on Freedom of the Seas out of Port Everglades over to the Western Caribbean, and she joins us on the line. How you doing, Krystal?
Doing great.
Can't wait to hear about Freedom of the Seas. As we always do, we'll take a step back, though. We'll get some pre-cruise thoughts. What made you want to sail this 8-nighter over New Year's Eve?
You know, people will know that New Year's Eve is the most expensive week to cruise. And so we had really avoided it in the past. But I was looking at other cruises, and it was probably the week that this itinerary opened up. And I saw a great price for the family ocean view room. And I said, hey, it's New Year's Eve, but it's a decent price, so let's go for it.
So did you track the pricing, like as it got closer to the sailing, the prices go up?
Yeah. I mean, when you're tracking, it just kept going up and up and up. And I don't know what the room would have cost, you know, if I had booked 6 months before. I didn't track it that closely, but yeah, the prices just go up.
Well, you're in the Chicago area, and you had to make your way down to Florida for this cruise. Any pre-cruise time down in Port Everglades?
Yeah, we did. We just flew in the night before, stayed at one of the hotels not too far from the port. I think this was another Embassy Suites, but it was pretty packed. I mean, it's right before New Year's Eve. There were a lot of people getting on ships in the hotel. You could see there must have been 6 or 8 signs for shuttles. The hotel partnered with, they weren't hotel shuttles, but the hotel partnered with a transportation company that was running shuttles every half an hour, and you just paid them directly and you waited in line. We didn't do that. We just took an Uber. We just wanted to go on our own and not have to worry about when a shuttle was coming or not. And really, for the 4 of us, for one Uber was the same price as what it would have been for the shuttle. So we took an Uber.
I know certain times of the year, the gate right there to get into Port Everglades could have quite the wait. How was it for this sailing?
Not bad at all.
No.
Not bad at all. We might have waited like 5 minutes.
Okay, not bad. So you make your way to the cruise terminal. How was the embarkation, and how long did it take you from the curb to the ship?
Yeah, the embarkation was really smooth. I mean, I haven't left from Port Everglades for a few years, but I've left the last few cruises on Royal Caribbean from Port Miami, and it's like night and day. Port Miami, that Terminal A, it is backed up all the time. But this was Terminal 19 at Port Everglades. We just drove right up. There was no traffic. We were probably on the ship within 10 minutes.
And have y'all sailed Freedom before?
No, first time.
Okay, so what were your first impressions as you boarded the ship?
You don't board. I guess that this is a Freedom class ship, and the first ship in the class is always named of the class. I don't know. Somebody can, write in and correct me. But so you don't board or you walk into the Royal Promenade like other ships. You sort of board into the stairwell. So it's kind of disconcerting when you walk in. You're like, where am I? Like, here are the stairs. It was nice because we looked and our muster station was basically 1 floor down, exactly from where we came in. So that was nice. But when you walk in, you don't get this like grand view. But overall, the ship, I mean, she was going into dry dock right after our sailing, but overall, she was in pretty good shape. I love the Royal Promenade. Something that seemed interesting to me was I felt like the corridors for the staterooms were appreciably wider than other ships.
Interesting.
So as they're making ships bigger and bigger, they're packing more and more stuff in, but they make those corridors, it seems like they were making those corridors more narrow to fit more stuff in. These corridors, I did not feel claustrophobic. Like, I could probably stretch my arms. I'm like, 5'10", and I could probably stretch my arms from one side to the other and, barely be touching the walls. It seemed really a nice, comfortable hallway.
Yeah, the ships these days, the new builds, especially as you were saying, like if someone has a wheelchair outside of their cabin, like you have to, sometimes walk sideways, kind of shimmy through it because, the hallways are so narrow these days. What kind of stateroom did you book for this 8-night cruise, and what did you think of it throughout the sailing?
We booked a family ocean view, which was fantastic. It's one of those staterooms so it's all the way at the front of the ship. The window was a nice size. It looked right over the helipad, and it has the bunk beds. Like you walk in, the first thing is on the left side, you've got a bunk bed. And then on the right side, you've got the bathroom. And then there's another little living room with another bed that you can pull out. And then a curtain between that sofa, the sofa with the living room with the sofa. And then there's a curtain between the master, sort of like the king bed. And then there's some nice room between the bed and the window. So we had tons of room for 4 of us. I think each of us got our own little like closet space because there was a separate closet space in the bunk bed area. There was a closet space for the living room area, pull-out couch, and then there was a closet space for the master bedroom, for the king bed. The bathroom seemed to be just a tad bigger than your usual stateroom bathroom. I mean, it was still like the tube shower, single vanity sink, but I just felt like I could very comfortably like turn in a circle. And I mean, if we really needed to, 2 people could have fit in that bathroom, which hardly ever happens on a cruise ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned that the ship was going into dry dock. Did you feel like the room needed a little TLC?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, some of the drawers barely closed, and there were other little like nicks and scratches. But the other thing too, I'll tell you, Doug, I thought about you because not a single USB port.
Oh no.
Not a one. There was one plug, one US plug, one European plug, and that was it.
Well, there you go.
I hope they add some.
Yeah, no, for sure. This day, 2025, you kind of need to have at least one of them. Well, let's talk about the food on board Freedom of the Seas. We'll start at the Windjammer, the buffet for Royal Caribbean. How was the Windjammer, the food selection, and did it ever feel like it was very crowded? Because I know like on these New Year's sailings and Christmas sailings and such, it is very family heavy.
Windjammer food was fantastic. I loved the Windjammer food. Definitely up there in one of the better Windjammers that I've been in. In general, it did get very, very crowded. Like peak breakfast was very hard to find a table. Other than that, it was not utilized as much as I would have expected given the number of families. Mm-hmm. But the food was fantastic. And if you slept in and you didn't mind eating, missing breakfast, at 9:30 to 10, it was packed. But if you waited till 11:30 at the beginning of breakfast, there was like nobody. So we just chose our times wisely, mm-hmm. and it was never an issue.
For the main dining room, what time dining did you have, and how was the service and food in there?
We used my time dining, and the food was great. This was the only time that I didn't make my time dining reservations ahead of time. We had just been on a Thanksgiving cruise, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around, making the reservations, and I didn't know what our schedule would be like. So we didn't have a set reservation until we were in the line for people without reservations, and there was generally a wait. Sometimes as short as 5 minutes and sometimes as long as 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. So not something I would recommend and not something I would do again, but it worked out. Because of that, we never had a repeat server. We always had somebody new. So you don't get that sort of like familiarity with your wait staff. So food was great. Service was great. But I just missed that little bit of extra when I book my time in advance.
You don't find that that's like a tough ask, though, sometimes? Because what if your shore excursion just beats the heck out of you and you want to take like an extra hour nap before dinner,
Yeah, I mean... And you don't have to, if you miss your reservation, it's a cruise ship. No one's coming after you, but mm-hmm. we generally know what the port times are. We know what our schedules are like. And so we've got kids. They always want to go to the kids club. So 6 to 6:30, we're pretty good. Anytime between 6 and 7 in general is going to be a solid dinner time mm-hmm. for us. And if you have a reservation for 6 and you don't show up till 6:30, they're okay.
Yeah, that's fair. Any specialty dining?
We did chops, and this was, I mean, I don't know how many Royal Caribbean cruises I've been on, probably like a dozen by now. This was up there with our worst chops experience yet.
Why?
I would say, I mean, the service was not very good. Our waiter seemed to have an agenda of what he wanted us to eat. And it took much longer than you would think, considering we saw he had like one other table, which was granted a big party. And he kept coming over and saying like, oh, I'm so sorry it's taking so long. It's very busy. And we're looking around and we're like, it's not that busy. We've been to Chops when it's been busy and this is not it. So, one thing about Chops that I put on my surveys, they need to upgrade their menu because it still says like giant asparagus or whatever those asparagus are called. Those asparagus are not giant. They're like the little skinny ones you get at Kroger. So they need to update their menus on that too. But yeah, overall, it's not going to deter me from going to Chops. Like I know that Chops is generally a great experience. It's just that this one was a miss. Any
other ones?
We did Izumi, but not Izumi hibachi. We did the sit-down sushi Izumi. Food was great. Service was great. It's a small one, and they take it because hibachi is so popular. You're just sitting at the sushi bar. It's a sushi bar for like 5 people or 6 people. And so, when you're with a family, it would be nice to all be able to like sit and look at each other, but it wasn't a deal breaker. You got to hear the show. So that's nice. If you like to just hear the shows going on, that's good for us. Sometimes I got a little bit loud because we weren't like a part of it, but in general, Izumi was a solid.
Okay. So Chops, Izumi, does this one have like the promenade with the Sorrentos and Park Cafe?
Yeah, no Park Cafe, but it has Sorrentos. It's got, it doesn't have Park Cafe, but it has Cafe Promenade. That's what it is. The Cafe Promenade, I thought their sandwiches were really good. Sorrento's pizza, I don't eat pizza, but the kids always eat it and they always love it. One of my favorites is on the pool deck. They have an El Loco Fresh. I think El Loco Fresh is amazing. I love their grilled meats and their salsa bar and nachos. So that was I had that for lunch like 2 or 3 times. So yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's any other like grab and go food. I can't think of any other grab and go food really.
El Loco Fresh, did that like replace the burgers and hot dogs section, or was there something there before or was it a brand new build out when they put it there?
Yeah, I think there used to be Sabor was the Mexican restaurant.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I have never been on a ship with Sabor. And I think the last one went away with the Allure of the Seas refurbishment. So I think a Loco Fresh was a replacement for Sabor.
Gotcha. And how was the entertainment on this 8-night cruise?
Entertainment was generally good. One of the comedians was not good. The singers were very good. The productions were great, but they did kind of like an homage to Broadway, and then they did another one about princesses. And like like I said, like the production value was amazing, but the songs that they chose and the Broadway shows they chose, I mean, it was geared towards a much older crowd. Like I think for the Broadway, probably the newest show that they did was a song from like a chorus line. Okay. Nothing very contemporary. So that was kind of a miss from the Broadway show, but like the talent and the scenery and the costumes and all that was fantastic.
How about any other entertainment around the ship? You mentioned that the one comedian was kind of a miss. Any like music venues or good bands around the ship?
The piano player at the Schooner Bar was fantastic. I never heard the guitar player at the pub, which is generally good. I noticed one thing about this ship that's unlike some of the newer builds is if you walk on the Royal Promenade, there are so many venues that have so many different types of music. There's a lot of noise bleed, right? I didn't really notice it as much on this ship. It's really good, whether it's intentional or just the way it's built. that when I'm on the Royal Promenade and like the house band is playing, other music doesn't bleed into it.
That could be an issue on some ships. I know, like with Holland America, for instance, when they had Lincoln Center Stage, the B.B. King's Blues Club, and then the Rolling Stone Rock Room going on, it would just be a hot mess until they put doors to divide everything, because it was just total bleed. And it was like, you're hearing classical in one ear and then the blues in the other. It's like, but they finally fixed it. But I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, how were the sea days as far as crowds and congestion?
Sea days were packed. The usual, chair hogs were out. I did notice some people actually talking to crew members about removing things. I don't know if anything actually got done about it, but the pool deck on the sea days was just wall-to-wall people. Inside, they had plenty of other things to do, but I think because it was New Year's Eve, because there were so many families, the pool deck was extra crowded. I will also say one thing about this pool deck. For this class of ship, it probably had the best splash-away bay I have ever seen. It was really big. It had big earth slides so that even older kids like 8, 10 could still be interested in this splash-away bay. It even had little mini, this was funny for the sea days, it had mini chaise lounges by the splash-away bay, like kid-sized chaise lounges that, of course, adults were lying in on those sea days. So, yeah, the pool deck was packed.
The casino, walking by it or through it, how was the smoke situation?
Not bad in this one.
No.
And we would have to walk through often. There was no way around it. And the smoke cell was not bad at all.
Well, let's talk about your ports of call on this 8-night cruise. So you leave Port Everglades. What was your first port and what was the highlight there?
Our first port was Nassau, Bahamas. We took the walk to the free beach. It's pretty packed. If you want a chair and you want, to get there, I would go earlier rather than later. The nice thing is it's right next to the reasonably newly built Margaritaville Resort. There was a restaurant you could eat in if you wanted to. We could get some like boba tea or ice cream. So that was really nice. It's a bit of a walk. So, if you want to walk in the heat for 15 or 20 minutes, you can walk there or just take a taxi.
What do you think of the new port area?
Oh, I love it. I love the new port area. I love the new straw market. It's so bright and there's so much variety. And I think they did a really nice job.
Okay, so you leave Nassau. What was up next?
So next was Cozumel. And we love Paradise Beach at Cozumel. The taxi driver told us that it's the only heated pool on the island. And so we just had a great time. We paid the a la carte price, got in, enjoyed some time at the pool, enjoyed some time in the ocean, got some food, and went back to the ship.
I'm going to ask you a stupid question because I am not a beach person, but being that far south, is the water warm in January?
Yeah, it was a good temperature. You could get in there. Definitely warmer than the Bahamas.
So you leave Cozumel. Where'd you go next?
From there, we went to Grand Cayman. This was our first time in Grand Cayman. We actually hopped in the local bus and the public bus and went to the turtle sanctuary. Kids loved it. It was fine. It was a lot of tanks. Basically, it's just a bunch of tanks with turtles. Mm-hmm. But the kids really liked it. They do have a water park there where you can swim and go on slides. And you can snorkel if you want to snorkel with the turtles. We didn't do that, but it looked nice.
So Grand Cayman, you did the turtle farm. And then what was up next?
Then we went to Falmouth. We opted for a Royal Caribbean excursion in Falmouth. And it was river tubing, Dunn's River Falls, and a restaurant. It was a really nice value. We really enjoyed it. I don't think I'll ever do Dunn's River Falls again because I was terrified the whole time I was gonna, crack my head on a rock. Mm-hmm. But it was a good experience and we had a lot of fun. This was a push for a cruise ship excursion because, if anybody who's been to Jamaica, it's like one road on the way to and from Falmouth to Ocho Rios, and there was an accident. And we got to the port 15 minutes after all aboard time, but obviously the cruise ship was waiting for us. And of course, there were pier runners even after we got on the ship because the traffic was horrific.
Yeah, so Falmouth is like probably dead center between, to the west, you have Montego Bay on the north shore of Jamaica, and then you have Falmouth, and then to the east, you have Ocho Rios there. If you had regular traffic, about how long? Is it about a 30, 45-minute ride if you didn't have any snarls or anything?
To Duns River Falls, it's probably, between 45 minutes and an hour. We stopped at the river tubing first, so it's hard to say completely, but yeah, it's probably between 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
It probably took us 2 hours to get back, though.
So after Falmouth, you rounded the cruise out at Labadee?
So what happened at Labadee is we actually had to go back to Jamaica and port in Ocho Rios and stop at the port in Ocho Rios because we had a medical emergency. And this poor person, I mean, we were there for 3 hours waiting for the ambulance to arrive from wherever they're arriving from in Jamaica. I never knew that the itineraries were so tight because we left Jamaica 3 hours late and we got to Labadee 3 hours late. A little bit more, maybe even a little bit more than that. And this was also a real fail on Royal Caribbean's part because everybody's antsy, everybody's ready to get off the ship, and the backup to get through, to get down the stairs and out onto the island, I think we waited 45. And we it's not like we immediately, as soon as they opened they put the gangway down, we left. We probably waited 35 minutes, but even still, it probably took us 30 to 45 minutes to get through the crowds of people. I mean, 3,000 people wanting to get out 2 gangway doors all at the same time. I feel like they could have done something kind of like when we tendered, right? Like they gave out tender numbers when we tendered at Grand Cayman. I feel like they could have done it in a more organized way, knowing that we were going to be late.
I have to ask you this about Labadee because I still get emails to this day with Royal Caribbean pulling out for about 6 months and now they're back to going there. Did you feel safe in Labadee?
Completely safe. Completely safe. Yeah. I love Labadee. I will say the last time we were there, we were at Barefoot Beach. And this time we were at Adrenaline Beach and it was just dirty. I mean, the temperature of the water was perfect, but the water was dirty. Like there was so much plastic in the water. I don't know if it was the tide that day or what. I'm like, this is gross.
You leave Labadee and you're back in Port Everglades. How was the debark process?
This was, again, another miss. So maybe because of going onto dry dock, we came into a different terminal. So I think we left out of 18 and came back to 19 or vice versa. We waited. We had a late number. We had an average flight. I think it was like 12:30 or something. So we weren't in a terrible rush to get off. We are Diamond Plus members. We sat in the Crown Lounge for our number to be called. And by the time our number was called, you knew everyone was off the ship because the elevators were practically empty. But yet, when we got to the 4th floor, where we were, snaking through the dining room and then outside to get off, that was probably 45 minutes. And even in the terminal, there was a lot of backup. So, once you got out of the terminal, it was easy. Just like the embarkation, there's not a lot of traffic, but getting there was a lot of backup. It took a long time.
Could you figure out why?
We couldn't. My guess is that this isn't a usual terminal for embarkation and debarkation. When we got to a point, we already had our luggage, I believe, and we got to a point where we were gonna go down either an escalator or an elevator, and a door opened to our left for another elevator and another escalator. So it was almost like they were trying to get everybody down this one elevator and escalator, and then all of a sudden they realized, oh wait, look, we've got this other elevator and escalator that people can use. And then we went, we diverted there and went straight down.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's my guess, is that they changed things around because of the dry dock, and that terminal just isn't used to that volume of people all at once.
Sure. Any first-time tips for someone sailing the newly refurbished Freedom of the Seas?
She is really a beautiful ship. I love that because she probably is the first ship from that class. There are just spots that are roomier that you can really, and that family ocean view suite, it's not a suite, but it's that family ocean view room. It is like the size of a suite. I should have checked the square footage for you before we got on, but there were 4 of us and we had plenty of room to move around.
Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this cruise for y'all?
I think our time in Cozumel, we love Paradise Beach Club. We were lucky that there was a la carte spots because in the days right after, the 3 days after us, all of the, they were completely sold out. And as a tip for people, if you want to go to the Paradise Beach Club and you don't want to pay the all-inclusive price, if it gets sold out of all-inclusive, then you can't go. You can't, they're not going to open it up to a la carte people of all the all-inclusive. So that's kind of a risk, but we just love it there. And we had a great time.
Taking a family on a New Year's Eve cruise, as you mentioned, isn't cheap. Was the value there for what you paid?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I'm a big advocate of booking earlier. And even though it looks weird, if you look in your app and, your cruise is, 500 and some odd days away, I'm a big advocate for you always get a good price. You have the opportunity to spread out your payments. And so it was most definitely a good value for us.
In closing here, your final thoughts of Freedom of the Seas.
I can't wait to go back on her and see what they did during the dry dock.
We've been talking with Krystal about her 8-night Western Caribbean cruise on Freedom of the Seas over New Year's Eve. Krystal, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
Thanks, Doug.
Just back from a cruise? Let's talk about it. Email Doug at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,